Welcome, Kevin, and for anybody else who joins later on, we'll give them an early welcome. But today we're talking about time tracking and billing, and just introducing how our company does it and the software that we built in the past that kind of does it as well. There's lots. I want to preface this with there's actually lots of ways to do this. This is definitely not the only way, but this is the way that our company has done it for two other companies that we've worked with to try and help them get a kind of an invoicing system up and going that didn't have to necessarily rely on QuickBooks or other time tracking softwares, and this is how we did it inside of Quickbase for ourselves. So I'm starting off things here just with a basic kind of diagram chart to show the layout of what's probably what I would consider bare minimum to be able to track things. The stuff that you could potentially leave out is you might actually be able to leave out punches and connect your invoices directly to time cards if you choose to do it that way. Most of the people we've worked with, they all wanted to be able to have people punch in and punch out, but the alternative is that you just have people track on the time card how many hours they spent during the week, and on each day how many hours they spent on each day. So that is an alternative to this workflow. Today we'll be presenting the punches workflow so you can kind of see how that one works. So without further ado, your basic setup is you're going to need to decide between bi-monthly and bi-weekly. That's going to be important to figure out your flow and the pipelines that are going to be generating this information month to month or week to or twice a month. Then you're going to need to be able to have your employee list and know either if you want salaries, you're going to likely want to include rates too, because in order to bill, you need to know what the employee is being paid hourly. And that also helps you make sure that you can kind of see that as they're working, you can even see how many hours they're working and what that value should be compared to a salary potentially, which also helps with internal reporting and understanding like how your employees are spending their time. And then some clients, we set up a system where we could simply bill based on the level of the employee's experience. And so each employee would be hired at a different rate, and the client would be charged dynamically based on the higher rates for those employees. So you can choose it to be, essentially you can choose to have like a multiplier of sorts. So if I'm getting paid 20 an hour and I want to bill the client double that, then I can multiply the 20 by 2 and then I can charge the client 40. And that helps cover all of like the other external costs that happen within companies like taxes and other stuff like that. So that is kind of just a short overview. These pay periods are associated to the timeline. So if you're bi-monthly or bi-weekly, then the pay period would change either twice a month or every 2 weeks, depending on how you have that. You decide to set that up. As far as your punches go or your time cards, the time that you spend in here is going to be based off of the employee rate. And then by having work days and weeks, you have the capacity to see whether or not there was overtime if you decide to track that level of detail. If you have W-2 employees, overtime is important in the States. If they're 1099s, then this is a little bit less important and it doesn't have as much relevance for those individuals. The one key piece here for billing really is just being able to say, hey, for every punch that occurs or for every time card, if that's how you decide to do yours, I want to append that to an invoice. And I'm going to show you in this system how we've pretty much automated the whole process. All you're doing is punching in and out, and as you punch in and out, depending on the time card that you're punching in under, it modifies or adds to the invoices of those clients. So let's dive into it here. So this is our time tracker app that we've created, and these are some time cards that I have available to me. I have a few of them here just to illustrate that you can have as many as you'd like. You can also set up different pay groups, which we had illustrated here as a service type or category. So you can kind of help the employees see, okay, I'm clocking in under this client with this service type. So depending on the services that you provide, you may have different service types listed here. We called this a pay group, and then the different clients that you're serving under. We also make it so that your own company can get billed for time that you are working for yourself. And this reflects in the billing and actually creates a reverse invoice that kind of loops back on top of itself. So you can kind of see almost a little bit of an ERP just from the fact that you're kind of self-invoicing and you see how much time is being spent and how much time you're being billed. So let's take a look at one of these punches that I just created here. On this one, I believe I was still setting up a little bit of my invoice stuff, but I can actually append these punches to any invoice that I want. So time that's spent, regardless of how it's spent or where it's spent, I can decide what invoice I want to correlate it with. So you can reassign punches and time that's spent to other invoices. To maybe you want to invoice it the following month, maybe you don't want to invoice that punch or a certain group of punches during a specific time range. So I'm going to associate this one to the December 1st under thread wallets. That's when I want this to be billed because it's still November 30th, and that means any work that I'm applying, I'd like it to be billed in the following month on the 1st. So I'll save that. And now if I clock in to my thread wallets, let's say I'm working for thread wallets here. If I clock into thread wallets on my home page, I will get a new punch below that will associate itself to the correct invoice based on the client that I'm punching in under. And apologies for the slow load. Recording my screen while I'm simultaneously doing this does not work super great while I'm in Quickbase. I need to probably find a better way to do that. But without further ado, if I punch in here, it's going to make an API call that's going to go create a punch record for me based on that time card that I'm clocking in under. I'll now see that I have the ability to clock out of this time card, and I'll also see that I have a new punch down here that I'm punched in under, and it's already related itself to the invoice value. And when I punch out, I'm required to submit a memo. So I can say, worked for thread wallets on their supply chain process. You can leave a little comment. This is important because each of these memos that you or an employee would leave associated to the work and the time that you worked. This is another reason we went with punches. It creates a lot more transparency when you're doing the billing, because the clients can go through their invoice and they can see all of the hours that were spent and memos appended to each of those hours, each of those punches that were spent. So now we're going to take a look at this, and we see that we've got 2 punches under this invoice now. So this is all within our time tracker app, and then we put billing in a separate app so that permissions were a little bit easier to manage, since certain individuals should definitely be able to go and track time, but other individuals should never be able to go and see the billing information. Now in here, I have 2 invoices for thread wallets. One of them is in yellow. That means that the invoice is still not been paid for yet. So the client that is going to be invoiced for this, they have not yet been not only have they not been invoiced because it's not the 12th on the 1st of the 12th, but they also haven't paid for this invoice. Currently, as it stands, for the amount of labor that has occurred, they'd be paying a total of $1,800. And if I go back to my time tracker, I can actually modify punches, and I probably should show this before I head over to billing, but I can modify these punches here based on if I made a mistake or if I clocked in late. I can take a look at the punch that I have and I can request a punch alteration, and depending on your level of permission within the app, the punch alteration, you can either submit it if you're kind of like the owner and you're sort of running the show. You can approve that alteration like I'm about to do here to show you guys, or you can change it just sets itself to reviewing and then someone else comes in and approves it. So let's say I mistakenly had time that I forgot the clock. I've now punched in and out. I can go and modify this and submit it. Let's say I clocked in at 8 this morning, and then I clocked out at, let's say I was going to clock out at 3, and maybe this was for yesterday. Maybe it's not even for today, so I can change the times here so that I am on a new time. And then let's say I clocked out at 4 that day. Got in at 8, went out at 4. I'll see now my change in time and the new time that I have. I've now worked an additional 7 hours and 59 minutes based on what it previously was, which was just a single minute. And I can see the new earnings that I'm going to be making from that based on the rate that I'm in. I currently have this set to be Guatemalan quetzales. This is also set to be multiple currencies, so you could set it to be USD. I'm going to approve this, and that will take this punch alteration and correlate it with the punch, and then overlay on top of the punch that new time. This makes it so that you have a running trail or log of every time an employee asks you to make a time change. So if they need to have a time change made, you have a running log of it. We also set this up so that you can choose the time zones that these are in. We had a few times where people were flying from one place to another, and when they took off, they knew what time they took off in what time zone they took off in. And when they landed, when they wanted to clock out, they knew where they had landed and in what time zone and what time they had landed in. So we allowed them to, you can essentially select which time zone you landed in and then the time in that time zone, and it will appropriately track, because the underlying values that are tracking your time is all based out of UTC. And so because the time is based in UTC, you can have the in time and out time be in any time zone, and it'll still calculate the amount of time that you were there correctly. So that's another use case for your punch alterations when you take flights like that. And then for the employee, at the employee level, you can associate what time zone you're in as an employee, and that will default all of your punches to be within a specific time zone. If you haven't looked about the time zone stuff, we have a previous video on the Quickbase community channel talking about time zones and how you can implement time zones within Quickbase as well. So I'm going to submit this punch alteration. This is going to run a pipeline that's going to go and update that punch that I previously had and change the times on the punch to be the times that I had in my punch alteration. And you can see that my new punch, the total amount of time that I've spent punched in, has also been changed. And you can even say that the date is now on the previous day here from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that is an example of punch alterations and kind of managing with your employees, giving them a way to autonomously go correct mistakes they have in their punch systems while you go and then approve those alterations that they've requested. Alright, so any questions from anybody so far? Nicole, welcome. I saw you joined. I'll bring you up to the stage if you want to talk. And then Kevin, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand or unmute and just let me know. So off to the invoice though in our billing app. So I'm heading back over to billing here. This is where we're tracking all of those punches and labor that's occurring against these different invoices. So this is the invoice that we have created here that has not been paid yet. It also hasn't been sent out because it's not the 12th of December, but we can see all of the labor that's occurred in here. And inside of our invoices, we created a few other mechanisms that allow us to essentially add different expenses or subscriptions. If these companies are on a subscription, you can create a recurring fee that happens every single month, or whatever cadence your subscription fee is for. And then this collect labor checkbox controls which invoice is capturing all the labor for a specific client. So, for example, if you need to make an invoice during the month, you can create as many invoices as you'd like, but the punches from your time tracker are all going to funnel into the correct invoice that has collect labor checked and is during the correct period that you're collecting that labor for. That allows you to cleanly create new invoices within the same invoice structure, but don't accidentally start bringing your labor into a different invoice that you wouldn't necessarily want to bring it into. This also does let you control, if you do want to change it so that it's from one invoice to another, you could uncheck your labor box and check it on a new invoice, and then those time cards or those punches will start to correlate to the new invoice that you are deciding to generate under. Okay, so that is how things are being connected together between the punches that build the labor that people are doing and then connecting it to your invoices. Then we have the color coding that tells us that this is time that has not been billed in yellow, and this means they've paid. Well, it means that the balance is 0, and that means that they've paid. But for this invoice, we don't have any billed time yet because it's going to start in the following month. So if I take a look at this invoice, let's say today is the 1st of December and I'd like to send this invoice out now. I would go through a small auditing process that day to make sure that the time associated, the billed labor associated to this invoice is accurate, and that the employees, any punch alterations that they've submitted have been addressed and accepted or denied, if depending on the situation. After that's done, then I can come here and I can print my invoice, and I can save this and then email it off to the client that it's going to be associated with. So this becomes a printable PDF that we can then send off to our clients. If we want to, we can also create payment instructions at the bottom of this that tell them where to go, whether that's a ACH account for a bank. You can kind of just default that value to be something relevant to you. If we bring this out and we go look at our payment instructions, we can add a set of instructions here to these. So for thread wallets, I could choose that set of payment instructions and then hit save. And then now if I go back and print again, I'll have a set of instructions for payments and where they can be received at. And that payment instructions is just a generic text field that we created because we found that every company has a myriad of different ways of collecting payments, and probably the easiest way is to just let them decide how they want payments to be received and then give them a text box that they can submit that information into. So this brings up your invoice that you can now send out to clients. I didn't include a due date here, but a due date could be included if there's, as part of your contract, they have to pay within a certain number of days. And then this gives the clients visibility of all of the memos that your employees had to append to each punch. This is where a lot of the transparency comes in, so that the clients can see exactly what their money's being spent on, and connect the dots between those different pieces. Let's see, I think that kind of wraps up this whole thing. The last thing to show is after they pay. There are different ways of approaching this. I think with a QuickBooks connection with the pipelines, you could potentially send your invoices directly from QuickBooks, and then when an invoice is received, you could also update and add a recorded payment. But in this case, we'll just say the employee has paid, and the payment was made on such and such a date, and was from a specific account, from Thread Wallets, checking, and maybe it was an ACH. And save that. Once this has been saved, that invoice is going to turn green in a paid state, and this balance goes down to 0. And at this time, you can also take the same invoice and you could now send it again over email to show that it's been paid. And after it's been paid, on the invoice itself, there is now a new value to show payments that have been made. So whereas previously on the previous invoices that we had just a bit ago, if I still have one of them up, I might have closed all of them out. This payment section was not present. We simply just don't have it because no payment had been applied. But now that there is a total payment, we show that the payment was received, the amount that it was received in, and then you could send this paid invoice now back out over email to show that that the money was received and that the invoice was paid. So that is a top-down approach for one way within Quickbase of doing billing and time tracking for your employees. We didn't really dive into workdays, weeks. I've got weeks in here twice. I should have this as months and this as quarters here. We didn't dive into this a whole lot, but this is mostly important when you have W-2s that you need to track overtime, or you need to be able to provide them with monthly statements of sorts, or if you're doing a performance report every quarter, it's useful to be able to show a summary of each quarter and how that employee performed during the quarter and the hours that they got in. Yeah, any questions so far? This is kind of the overview. Is there anything you guys feel like I missed that you would be interested in seeing of how we kind of like operate?
You have one question.
Yeah.
Is there a particular benefit to splitting this functionality between two different apps?
So for us, we really wanted to make permission systems simple, and the bigger an app gets, the harder it is to add a new role. So if you have a really big app, the roles get extremely tedious. That and the home pages are also extremely inconvenient, start to become inconvenient. Where if I'm trying to do stuff for billing, I just want to be able to hop straight into a home page that's straightforward and easy for me. We are also using the new home pages. I think in the older home pages it could be a lot more, potentially more straightforward for you to navigate them. But the main reason for us really was roles and permissions. We have a centralized space where we allow the different users to get access to different apps and systems. And for us, making that simplified so that each app has a specific role that they can allow the employee to gain access of those things was important to us. So the billing role right here, you can select for an individual employee what level of role they should have within billing. And Kevin, you've mentioned the RACI system in the past. This is it's not a derivative of it by any means, but it is just a way of managing with a little more flexibility all of the access permissions and roles that a particular employee has within an app ecosystem. And so that's why we split our time tracker and our billing away from each other, and then gave specific roles that could be more simple, helped us make the role assignments simpler and building roles easier. Great question.
You mentioned something about evaluations or assessments. Do you run those in Quickbase as well, based off of your timesheets or time tracking?
Performance assessments?
Yeah. Sorry, they're called 87 different things.
Yeah, that's what you're right. They are. But yeah, so I'll occasionally go into my time tracker, and I have a month-to-date total that I can grab for a specific employee. I can go look at these totals of how they've been paid so far and the amounts that they've made, and I can generate different reports here. I also use this a little bit for attendance. So if I just want to go see like who's been coming to work every single day, especially when you're running a remote company, sometimes that can be really useful to know like who's been here every day. This is test data, so I don't actually have any live information here to be showing. But yeah, we use this to kind of connect the dots between how frequently are they working, how many hours are they working. I think for every company there's a certain threshold where if an employee isn't working a certain number of hours, it actually becomes a burden to have them within the company because they're joining in company meetings, they're being caught up in the loop of everything that's going on, and they're an expense to the company, and if they're not working enough hours, then it can become difficult to keep them internal here. So we do that, and then we have little reviews that we'll do with them in the HR system where we'll review a performance and then the goals that they have set. We also allow them to set an hourly goal. So within Time Tracker, this total number of hours over here, the color of the box will change depending on the goal they have set. So if their set goal is to do 20 hours a week, then they're let me get over there. Then as long as they're getting those 20 hours for every single week, then they'll get it. Or if it's 10 hours a week, then they'll get that too. So right now, I believe I have my targets set to 0. But you can create your target, and then if your target is 0, then you're always going to be in the green for your total earned and your hours here. But if you decide to set a target goal for yourself, either from a money standpoint or from an hourly standpoint, then it helps the employees visually just apply themselves. They can see where they're supposed to get to at the end of every day, and set goals for themselves for how much money they're wanting to do. And then these targets change each day. So you're not setting like a target like, oh my gosh, I have to do 80 hours. It just says, no, today you just need to get 6, or today you need to get 8. And then the next day, get another 8. And then it gets into the green by the end of every single day. We also have a leaderboard here on the right-hand side, so all of the employees who you're correlating or working with, you guys can see each other's hours, your average hours, total hours, who you're working for. Kind of gives like a little sense of vibrancy, especially in remote workspaces, where you don't, like who's here today? Are they even working? We also use Discord for that, where we can kind of like chat and hang out just like we do here in the community. But this definitely helps from a leaderboard perspective to see how people are doing, and who's, especially from an admin perspective too, it helps. If you see someone's kind of falling behind, it's nice to be able to just reach out to them and chat, give them a morale checkup, I guess you could call it. So.
Okay, cool. I think I missed the first part about, so I guess I came in on the billing part of it, but so the 2 apps, one where you're actually doing the entry of the time, and then a second that's doing the monetary value of it.
Yeah, so the billing is actually, the billing system is actually designed to bill for anything, not just time. So the invoices could actually be, our ecosystem spans into supply chain management and factories. So this software allows people to even clock in on factory floors, and with an ID badge and a QR code, it instantly can clock them in under a time card. And then they can have multiple time cards depending on if they have access to different parts of the factory. So if you have access to the quality assurance section of the factory, you can clock into there. If the factory wants to track the amount of time the employee is spending at lunch, you can set up a scan-in location at the lunch room, and then they scan in and scan out when they enter and exit their lunch rooms. So it's exceptionally versatile. The scan-in and scans-outs of the lunchrooms would apply. You could even set it up so that that's being applied to a lunch invoice, and the lunch invoice invoices your own company. And then you could start to see like, hey, every month we're paying this much as a reverse invoice for people to go to lunch. Why are they there all the time? Sometimes, I don't know, within factories, there's all sorts of weird things that go on. Like we had a couple of factories ask us, can you set up a scanner at the bathroom? We've had people that just go in and just hide. And like
Oh yeah.
chill out, right? We want to see how much time are these people spending in the bathrooms. So they set up scanners at the bathrooms, and then they could see every employee how long they were spending on the bathroom breaks and gauge the waste on that. So yeah, and then it comes through as I think the funniest part is it comes through as an invoice, because you can collect this labor into a specific invoice. So we gave them a bathroom break invoice, and they can see their invoice for the amount of time they're paying for their employees to go to the bathroom. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting ways you can do it. But yeah, the billing also allows you to bill for things that were purchased in our Elements software as well. So that's another reason we built it into a separate app, because it's universal and allows you to invoice for really anything that is going on within the app ecosystem.
So it's like truly like an accounts receivable.
Yeah. Yep. So thanks for the questions. I appreciate it. Helps with clarity. I'll be posting this to...
Adding a year table? Sorry,
No, yeah, you're good. We do. We have a year to date here. I just didn't have it.
I saw your workflow.
Yeah, I just didn't add it to here because I kind of ran out of space at the bottom. I'm like, so I chopped it off. But no, yeah, it's here. We've got year to date. We've got work days, work weeks, month to date totals. I believe quarterly is buried in here somewhere. From an HR perspective, the company itself also has months and days and such, so you can kind of track the overall flow of things. We found using a table does help. You can use summary reports in a lot of ways, but we found that just having a table where the relationships are static and they're growing and there's a very long history of them that you can go browse was a lot easier than just trying to create a specific kind of summary report for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how we tackle that. So alongside this, I guess I should preface, these are employee specific. So each employee gets one work day, each employee gets one work week, each employee gets 1 month to date. And then there's another set of tables that runs alongside this for the entire company that each of these tables is related to as a child. So all the data can summarize up and funnel into the companies. But yeah, at the very beginning I just said there's a million ways that you can do this. This is just one that I figured I'd make a recording and show.
Before I did Quickbase, I worked as payroll, HR, and receivable, so it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still growing.
And start taking payments so we can get rid of QuickBooks.
Yeah. Honestly, if you could integrate into the taxes, I think QuickBooks would be sweet to get rid of. I feel like everybody keeps it around because it simplifies tax and CPA access.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So if somebody were able to create some kind of silver bullet for taxes that isn't as expensive as QuickBooks, that could integrate with whatever you've got inside of Quickbase, that would probably be pretty sweet. So, but
that would be an undertaking since the tax table can update on a monthly basis, especially if you have like employees outside of your state. You know, if you're not just dealing with one state.
Yeah, and right now I'm trying to figure out how do I deal with hiring foreign. Like if I'm hiring someone in another country, what does that mean? You know, it's always changing. So, Kevin,
Yeah,
Kevin, you had something you wanted to say? I saw you unmuted there for a second.
did. Now I'm not sure what that was.
That's all right. Cool. Well, that is my presentation. I'm going to end the recording now, and we can just chat if you guys want for a little bit. But I'll post this up to the community